I'm going to ask you 3 questions. You only have 3 seconds to answer each one. Don't think, just answer. Question 1. How many animals of each kind did Moses take onto the ark? Did you answer 2? Most people do. But Moses never built the ark. Noah did. Question 2. A plane crashes exactly on the border between the United States and Canada. Where should the survivors be buried? They shouldn't. They're survivors. Last question. Say this word 5 times. Silk, 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 silk. Now answer quickly. What do cows drink? Most people say milk, but cows drink water. 3 questions, 3 completely different mistakes, yet they all happened for exactly the same reason. Your brain wasn't trying to be accurate, it was trying to be fast. It filled in missing information, skipped details, and reached a conclusion before you even realized it. The strange part is, this doesn't only happen during quizzes. It happens when you shop, when you invest, when you vote, when you fall in love, even when you think you're making a perfectly rational decision. Because your brain doesn't always think first. Sometimes, it predicts first. Most people imagine thinking works like this. First, you see reality. Then, you analyze it. Finally, you make a decision. But your brain works in reverse. It predicts first, then it checks whether reality matches that prediction. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman called this System 1, the fast brain. Imagine you're walking home late at night. You suddenly hear glass shatter behind you. You don't calculate the probability of danger, you turn around immediately. That instinct saved human lives for thousands of years. But today, the same shortcut can also fool you. Because once your brain makes a prediction, it becomes surprisingly difficult to ignore it. And sometimes, all it takes is one random number. Let's try a quick experiment. Don't overthink it. Just answer with the first number that feels right. How tall is the tallest tree on Earth? Got a number? Good. Now let me ask you something strange. Before I ask that question, what number was already inside your head? Maybe 100, or perhaps 1,000. Even if you had absolutely no idea, your brain still grabbed the first number that felt reasonable. Psychologists call this the anchoring effect. When your brain doesn't know the correct answer, it quietly uses the first number it encounters as a starting point, even when that number has nothing to do with reality. Researchers demonstrated this with an incredibly simple experiment. Participants first watched a wheel spin. The wheel landed on a completely random number, 10 or 65. Then they were asked an unrelated question. What percentage of African countries are members of the United Nations? The number on the wheel was completely random. It had nothing to do with geography, nothing to do with politics, nothing at all. Yet people who saw the higher number consistently gave higher estimates, and people who saw the lower number gave lower estimates. A meaningless number had quietly changed their judgment. Now think about how often this happens in real life. A jacket is marked $300, then discounted to $150. Suddenly, it feels like a bargain. Not because it's cheap, but because your brain is comparing it to the first price. The first salary mentioned during a job interview often becomes the reference point for the entire negotiation. A house listed for an unusually high price can make every other house on the street look affordable. Even YouTube isn't immune. When you see a video with 10 million views, your brain already expects it to be good before you even press play. The strange thing is, most people believe they're making independent decisions. But sometimes, the very first number they happen to see has already made part of the decision for them. But numbers aren't the only thing that tricks your brain. Sometimes, You buy something you never wanted, simply because someone placed another option right next to it. Imagine you're out to subscribe to a streaming service. You see 3 plans. Basic, $9. Standard, $15. Premium, $18. Which one would you choose? Take 3 seconds. Most people pick the premium plan, but now let me remove the standard plan. Only 2 choices remain. Basic, $9. Premium, $18. Suddenly, far fewer people choose premium. Why? The premium plan didn't change, the price didn't change, nothing changed, except the option next to it. Psychologists call this the decoy effect. Sometimes, an option isn't there to be chosen. It's there to make another option look better. The middle option acts like a comparison tool. Without it, your decision changes, even though the product stayed exactly the same. Companies use this trick every day. A small coffee, $4. A medium coffee, $6. A large coffee, $6.50. Suddenly, the large size feels like an incredible deal. Not because you wanted more coffee, but because your brain started comparing. Apple does this with storage options. Restaurants do it with combo meals. Movie theaters do it with popcorn. The most expensive option isn't always designed to sell. Sometimes, it's designed to make the second most expensive option feel reasonable. The strange part is, after making the decision, your brain creates a story. I chose this because it was the best value. I compared all the options. I made a logical choice. But in reality, your choice may have changed the moment someone added one extra option to the menu. And if simply adding one fake choice can change what you buy, what happens when nobody changes the choices, and instead changes the words? Because your brain doesn't only react to facts, it reacts to how those facts are presented. The exact same product can feel healthy or unhealthy. The exact same price can feel like a reward or a punishment, depending on just a few words. So far, you've seen how your brain can be influenced by numbers and by choices. But here's something even stranger. Imagine you're shopping for ground beef. Package A says 90% lean. Package B says contains 10% fat. Which one sounds healthier? Most people choose the first one, even though both packages contain the exact same meat. Nothing changed. Not the ingredients, not the nutrition, only the wording. Psychologists call this the framing effect. Your brain doesn't simply react to facts, it reacts to the way those facts are presented. Doctors have known this for years. Imagine your doctor says, "This surgery has a 90% survival rate." Most people feel relieved. Now imagine the doctor says, "This surgery has a 10% mortality rate." Exactly the same statistic. Yet suddenly, it feels far more dangerous. The numbers never changed, only the frame. Companies understand this. Governments understand this. Advertisers understand this. A store doesn't say, "You'll lose $20. It says, "You'll save $20. Because your brain experiences a gain very differently from avoiding a loss. The strange thing is, after making your decision, you rarely notice the words that influenced you. You simply believe it was your own opinion. But words aren't the only thing that can switch your brain into autopilot. Sometimes, all it takes is a single word. Imagine you're standing in line to use a copy machine. Someone walks over and asks, "Can I go first? I only have 5 pages." Would you let them? Most people would. Now imagine they say, "Can I go first? Because I need to make copies." That isn't a real reason. Of course they need to make copies. That's why they're standing at the copier. So surely, fewer people would agree, right? Wrong. Psychologist Ellen Langer tested this in a famous experiment. When people heard the word "because," they became far more likely to say yes, even when the reason made absolutely no sense. Why? Because your brain hears the word "because" and automatically assumes a logical explanation is coming. It lowers its guard, without checking whether the explanation actually deserves to be believed. But here's the interesting part. Langer repeated the experiment with a much bigger request. Instead of 5 pages, the person wanted to copy 20 pages. Suddenly, the fake reason stopped working. People started thinking again, because now the decision actually mattered. Your brain doesn't avoid thinking all the time. It only avoids thinking when it believes the cost is small. And that's why the most persuasive people don't always give better reasons. Sometimes, they do something far smarter. They change the question itself. By now, you've probably noticed a pattern. Your brain doesn't like starting from scratch. It looks for shortcuts. A number, a comparison, a familiar word. Anything that makes thinking a little easier. But there's one shortcut more powerful than all the others. A question. Imagine someone asks, "How do we stop lazy employees?" Seems harmless. But before you've even answered, your brain has already accepted one hidden assumption, that the employees are lazy. The question didn't just ask for your opinion, it quietly told you what to believe. Now imagine a news headline. "Why are young people losing motivation?" Or, "How can we solve the immigration problem?" Notice something? Both questions already assume the conclusion. Your brain rarely stops to ask, "Wait, is that even true?" Instead, it immediately begins searching for an answer. The most persuasive people understand this. They don't always argue better. Sometimes, they simply control the frame before the conversation even begins. One of the greatest examples happened during the 1984 US presidential debate. Ronald Reagan was 73 years old. Many voters believed he was simply too old to serve another term. During the debate, he was asked whether his age would affect his ability to lead. It was a difficult question. Most politicians would have defended themselves. Reagan didn't. He smiled and answered, "I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience." The audience burst into laughter. Even his opponent laughed. In one sentence, the entire conversation changed. The debate was no longer about Reagan being old. It became about his opponent being inexperienced. He never answered the question. He replaced it. That's the real lesson. The people who influence us most aren't always the ones with the best answers. They're the ones who decide which question gets asked. And maybe, the most important question isn't about politics, or advertising, or the news. It's about your own life. How many beliefs inside your mind were never your own conclusions? How many started because someone else framed the question for you? Hundreds of years ago, some ancient maps contained a simple warning. Here be dragons. Beyond this point, dragons live. No one had ever seen those dragons, but for centuries, people avoided sailing beyond those waters. Not because the dragons were real, but because the map said they were. Your brain has maps too. I'm not smart enough. I'm too old. People like me don't succeed. I'm just not that kind of person. But have you ever stopped to ask, who drew that map? Maybe the biggest illusion isn't what you believe, it's believing you arrived at those beliefs on your own. So the next time your brain gives you an immediate answer, don't just ask, is this true? Ask something even more important. Who taught me to think this way? Because sometimes, changing your life doesn't begin with finding a better answer. It begins with questioning the question. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.